We're going to start out here by having Dewey remove the outer back cover. The outer back is held in place by 8 snap fasteners that are molded to the inside surface of the outer back. These nest into little bosses that are molded on the inner back. He's got a tool that will slide in between the covers and help pry those fasteners apart. He's trying to reach inside there and put the tool close to the location of the fasteners so he's not deflecting the plastic any more than he needs to. Okay, once the 8 snap-in retainers are apart, on the underside of the shell there's a couple tabs that engage with the outer seat. He's going to flip the chair upside down and finish removing the outer seat, or the outer back. As a rule, to get the lower half of the outer back disengaged, you're going to have to disengage the rearmost fastener that's on the outer seat. That's what Dewey's doing right now. And once that's pulled up out of the way and the tabs are disengaged, you can just lift off the outer back. From here, the next step is to take the arms off so that the cowl and outer seat can be removed. The arms held in place by 2 screws on each side on the upper portion of the arm. Once the screws are removed, the arm can be rotated back approximately 45 degrees, and that will disengage the lower end of the arm, and then the arm can be slid out off of the control. As it starts to come off, it's going to hang up on the cowl. There's a little slit on the cowl that can be opened up so that the arm can slide through. What Dewey's pointing to there is the lug that cams into a feature on the upright, and that's what retains the lower end of the arm. We'll be able to get a better look at that once the covers are off. Okay, second arm comes off the same way. They're going to be fairly snug on the tube so that they're not wobbly, so you're going to have to rock them slightly while you're pulling for them to come off. Next, the cowl will come off. That's done by just pulling the front portion of it out so it slips over the tubes. And then slide it out towards the rear of the chair. The outer seat has engagement features molded into it just like the outer back does. Dewey's using the same tool to pry up on those and disengage them. Once the tabs are disengaged from the inner seat, the part just slides off. Okay, this is showing the 7 engagement features that are molded into the outer seat. When he sticks the tool in there to pry these apart, he's trying to get those over the peg like you would pulling a nail with a claw hammer. Okay, next Dewey's going to remove the seat and back cushion. He's inserting screwdrivers in the circular holes in the top of the upright and then pushing them inward to push forward the cantilevered tabs that are molded into the inner shell. Those tabs engage with wedge-shaped protrusions in the top of the upright. Once those tabs are pushed out of the way, he's going to pry upward on the shell And once it's moved about 1/4 of an inch or so, pull the screwdrivers back out, because at this point the tabs cannot re-engage until the shell's pushed back down. And now the shell slides up. You have to push it forward slightly to disengage some of the other tabs. And just slide it up out of the way. What he's pointing at there, first of all, are the cantilevered tabs. Those are molded outward, and they flex and engage in some wedge-shaped protrusions that are stamped in the back of the upright. Those features work together and keep the shell from sliding up off of the upright. There's a couple other features of note. In the upper corner of the engagement portion of the inner back, there's a couple little plates there, or plate-type protrusions that are molded outward. Those trap the top portion of the upright. Okay, Dewey's pointing to a couple holes there that are stamped in the top portion of the upright. Screws go through those holes and engage in those bosses that he's pointing to there. The screws will be used if for some reason the snap features get damaged, say in a field repair, or damaged during installation, or on a chair that doesn't have arms. You may see those screws also. If the screws are in place, it's just a matter of backing those out and then disengaging the snap features like Dewey just did, and then the shell will come right off. Now we've seen all the snap features and what they do, we're going to put it back together and go through the operation again. Now we're going to disassemble the control assembly. Before you start working on the control assembly, the tension should be backed off all the way so it's full loose. Now the knob can be taken off by flipping the control upside down and removing the Phillips head screw that attaches the knob. The screw is taken out and then the knob just slides off. Now the tension adjustment mechanism can be removed. This is done by holding the shaft with a crescent wrench or locking pliers. Then the center lock nut that's on the top of the shaft can be removed with a 1/2-inch socket. The nut that he's removing now is what provides the stop when you're loosening the tension up. The tension adjustment nut travels up the shaft until it hits that center lock nut.
Tell them to use the deep side.
Oh. Since the nut's so far down on the shaft, a deep well socket's going to be required to get that off. Once that's removed, now you can slide the knob back on and just loosen the tension shaft like you would do when you're loosening up the tension, and just keep turning until the mechanism pops apart.
Okay, so chair back on.
Okay. The tension adjustment is provided through that square nut. The nut is trapped in the tension adjustment bracket there. And once the shaft comes out, you can pull those two parts out. There you can see the square nut. That's installed so the flat surface is down, and that nests down inside the depressions in the tension adjustment bracket. I just want to point out here that now a lot of the parts we're going to be dealing with are going to have grease on them. You want to make sure you're not working on any light-colored carpeting, or if you are, put some kind of drop cloth down. Now the torsion springs are going to be removed. The first step in this is to remove the pivot tube, which is the axle you see spanning across the control mechanism there. This tube has two oval-shaped windows punched in it, and they engage in the plastic bearings that the torsion springs are setting on. So to disengage those, first you're going to want to go in and slide the torsion springs as close together in the center of the control as you can. Now that the torsion springs have been slid in towards the center, you can see the cantilevered locking tabs that are in the spring bearings. You want a small flat screwdriver for this. You can reach in there now and pry up on each of those. With his other hand, Dewey is holding pressure against the tube. He's doing that so that once he pries that cantilevered feature out, it doesn't drop right back in. And then he'll go to the other side, pry that one up out of the way, and the tube should slide out. Now, what we've done is remove the tape that was on the other side of that tube. That tape is being used on some of the early chairs to make sure that the arms are snug when they go on. What you can see now is the pivot tube and the two oval-shaped holes that are punched in it. The cantilevered fingers that are molded into the spring bearings drop into those, and they keep the tube from sliding from side to side. Now, to finish removing the torsion springs and the uprights, you need to push the upright slightly forward and then reach in and grab that spring bearing and wiggle it, and it will pull out the side. There you can see the bearing, and up towards the center portion of it is that cantilevered feature. If you flip that over, you can see the oval shape insert that drops into the tube. That's what he's prying up out of the way. The other side will come apart in the same manner. Once that bearing comes off, the upright's free to be lifted off of the control body. Let's hold the bearing up there again for a second. By pulling forward on the upright, we were disengaging the upright from the little depression that's molded in the bottom side of that spring bearing. There's like a little step that's molded in there that engages with the upright and keeps the bearings from sliding out. Spring pressure holds that engaged once the control is assembled. Now the upright can be lifted off of the control body. Now, mounted on the back flange on the control body are two bumpers. When they're reinstalled, these parts need to be greased. They provide cushions for the front stops, for the back stops, and also act as a sound deadener so that the upright doesn't make any noise while it's pivoting up and down. And at this point now, the torsion springs can be lifted out. Okay, now we're going to remove the pneumatic activation system. This consists of three major parts. First, you've got a spring steel bracket that's trapped on the end of the rod. This is what activates the cylinder when it's pushed down. Then there's a 3/8 diameter rod that the handle is attached to. And then the white part you're seeing is a plastic bearing that isolates the metal surfaces, cuts down on noise. The first step is to insert a flat screwdriver in between the rod and the bracket, and it needs to be big enough so that when you twist that, it actually picks up the bracket slightly. And then you can put pliers on it and squeeze and slide the bracket off the end of the rod. The screwdriver is being used just to disengage the bracket from a depression that's formed in the end of the rod. You may need to be pulling up on the handle like you're activating the cylinder in order for the spring steel bracket to slide outside of the bearing. Once the steel part has been slid out 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch, you can push down on the handle and the spring steel part will pick up out of the bearing, and you can finish sliding that off the end of the rod. You may have to rock it a little bit. It's on there fairly tight, or use pliers. Once that's off, the handle can be pushed down and the rod will snake out through the bottom of the control body. Now the plastic bearing can be removed. This part is all snap features that just snaps in place. So to snap it out, first put a small screwdriver under the flange on the right-hand side of it and just pry that straight up. Now on the other end of it, there's a little J-shaped hook or handle that's molded into the part. Pick that up and that will disengage the part, and then it can be slid outboard and the whole thing lifts out. A couple features of interest we want to point out on the plastic bearing. On the underside of the part, there are a couple protrusions that help trap the spring steel part when the two are functioning together. The spring steel part is inserted through a hole that's molded into the plastic bearing, and when it goes in there, there are a couple of protrusions that stick up about 1/8 of an inch, and the steel part has to clear those to go together or to come apart. That's something to watch for when you're taking the spring steel part out of the bearing. Now, installing these parts is just the reverse. First, the end of the bearing that has the little handle is slid into place, and then the oval shape end of it is pushed down and drops into the support channel there. Now the rod is snaked up from the bottom of the control body through those holes. And the spring steel part is now slid on the end of the rod. You do this by first putting the end of the rod through the first hole you encounter and then pulling up on the end of the steel bracket so that you actually flex it up and the rod can come through the second hole. You're having to pry this up because we're getting the spring steel bracket up out of the way so it can slide on and then drop down into the depression. Once the end of the rod is started through the second hole, the spring steel part can just be slid on until it is far enough on to drop through the plastic bearing. And once it's dropped through the bearing, it needs to be held down slightly to clear the protrusions we just discussed. And then hammered or slid in until the outside edge of that spring steel part drops into the depression that's stamped in the end of the rod. And at this point, the mechanism is reassembled. Okay, just want to point out at this point, the pneumatic cylinder can be activated by either pulling up on the handle, and you can see how the mechanism is pivoting about the outside protrusion that's on the bottom of the control body, or the handle can be pushed down, and at this point it's pivoting about the spring steel part on the outside edge there. Now we're going to tear down a tilt lock assembly. The tilt lock functions by pushing down on the handle, and the plate that's hinged inside the upright swings down, and features on that plate engage with the back surface of the control body, and that's what stops your travel. To tear the mechanism down, first remove the small extension spring. Doesn't matter which end you take off first. That's just a matter of unhooking the spring. Then the plastic stop slides off the bracket. Next, the rod can be removed by pulling up on the rod and sliding it clear of the features and then wiggling it so it slides out of the oval hole that's punched in the side of the upright. Next, there's a flat formed spring that's inserted through a little opening between the plate and the upright that just slides out. And now the plate can be swung fully back, and the J-shaped hooks will disengage and the part's free to lift out. The block that guides the rod is attached with a snap feature. There's a set of barbs that extend on the outside of the upright. To remove the block, just put some pliers on those barbs and squeeze them together. Once they're squeezed together, the block will drop out. If a tilt lock's being installed in the field and the chair has not previously had one, you can see where the areas need to be greased. The 3 slots where the J-hooks on the plate go through, we grease the inside of those and also the surface around them. And also the surface of that formed spring is greased so that when the rod slides over it, it moves freely. You see there's grease applied to the outside surface of that part. Now to install the tilt lock, the first step is to install the block. The 2 pins that are molded into the block will line up with the holes, and that will also start the snap feature, and it's just pulled outward into the upright and it snaps in place. Next, the plate can be installed. That's installed by inserting the 3 J-shaped tabs into the 3 slots in the upper side of the upright. The plate's pulled all the way backward and then swung forward once the J-shaped tabs engage. Next, the formed spring is installed by sliding the flat end of that into the opening between the plate and the upright. Now the rod's installed by engaging the bent part of the rod with a track in the tilt lock block. And once that's in place, the other end is inserted through the slot on the upright, and then the rod will push down inside. Now the stop is slid on the little tab that protrudes from the bracket, and then the extension spring is installed by putting one end through the hole in the tab, and the other end hooks on the protrusion on the back of the tilt lock block, and the mechanism's ready to go. Okay, to assemble the control assembly, first the torsion springs are set in place. The legs on the torsion springs are the same length, so you have right hand and left hand springs, but you don't have to worry about which leg is pointing forward and which leg is pointing back. Once those are set in place, there are 2 bumpers that mount on the flange on the back of the control body. Those are slid into place. And now the upright is set into its position over the control body. The bumpers may have to be pushed in slightly so that this can drop over. Now once it's in its approximate location, the spring bearings can be slid into place. Both of the spring bearings are identical. There are no right hand or left hand parts. The bearings are slid in from each end, and they're pushed in far enough so that the step on the underside of the bearing engages with the outer wall of the upright. That's what keeps the bearings from sliding out. Now that the bearings are in place, the tube can be slid into place. The oval holes, or the D-shaped holes that are stamped in the tube, are what engage with the bearing. Those keep the tube from sliding out of position. The D-shaped holes need to be pointing straight upward when the rod is slid in. Now you start the tube Start the tube into the bearing. It will slide in until it runs into the cantilevered protrusion. You need to reach in with your finger and push that up out of the way. And then the tube can slide in farther. And you can slide that so it's almost all the way through the second bearing, and then push it up into place, and that will push the cantilevered feature up out of the way. And then push the tube far enough through that it's centered in the assembly, and rotate it and move it back and forth until the cantilevered clips or the cantilevered snaps drop into place. You'll hear a slight click when that happens. Okay. If you have trouble locating those, you can slide the torsion springs in towards the center of the mechanism, and you can look for the holes through the little gap in the bearings. Okay, now the torsion springs need to be slid out, and the back leg of the torsion spring needs to be positioned so that it's held in place by the little protrusions in the back of the upright. The protrusions are in the location where you can see grease on the outside of the upright. Right there you can see the protrusions that are formed in the upright. They locate the end of the torsion springs. Now, if you have a chair with tilt lock, the next step is easier if you rotate the upright forward and then lock it in the forward position. That holds the upright forward. If you don't have tilt lock, you've just got to hold the upright forward by hand or have an assistant help you. Now the tension adjustment mechanism can be installed. The first part to go in is the tension adjustment bracket. The tongue on that slides into the slot on the front of the control body, and then that part swings down to rest on the front legs of the torsion springs. Now the tension adjustment shaft can go in. There's a plastic bearing on this shaft that needs to be greased, and the plastic bearing just slides down against the shoulder of the shaft. Now the whole shaft is inserted up through the bottom of the control body, through the hole in the tension adjustment bracket, and now the square nut is installed with a flat surface down. Once the nut's started, you'll want to tighten the mechanism down until you have about 1 inch of the shaft protruding out of the top of that square nut. Now at this point, the knob can be slid off because you're going to want to hold the end of the shaft with a crescent wrench or some locking pliers. And the center lock nut can be run down onto the shaft now. The center lock nut is going to drive on hard. It's got a locking mechanism formed into it. The nut should be turned down until approximately 1/2 inch of the shaft protrudes out of the top of that center lock nut. If a measuring device isn't available, that square nut is a 7/16 nut. The distance across the flats on the square nut is 7/16. That can be used as a gauge. You want about that amount of threads showing out of the top of the center lock nut. Now the knob can be installed by slipping it over the end of the tension adjustment shaft and installing the Phillips head screw that holds the knob in place. The threaded portion of the shaft needs to be greased down in the area where the square nut is running. This makes the mechanism easier to adjust. Now we're going to reinstall the seat back cushion on the control body. In the front portion of the cushion on the underside, we've got features molded in for attaching to the control body. There's little U-shaped protrusions molded into the shell there. Those hook under the front flange on the control body, and then the whole cushion rotates back and drops into place. We'll see that in a minute. Okay, to install the cushion, first hook those protrusions under the flange on the front of the control body, and then rotate the chair, or rotate the seat back down until you're close to the normal position. At this point, the features on the top part of the shell will be ready to line up with the upright. The top part of the upright needs to be hooked under the protrusions, on the shell, and then the whole assembly is pushed down and it slides straight down until the cantilevered tabs engage with the upright. At this point, the cushion's installed and the chair just needs to have covers on it and it's ready to go. Now the outer seat can be installed. You want to have the chair upside down to do this. Here Dewey's showing the features that snap into the bosses on the underside of the shell. The outer seat is slid into place, positioned so that the retainers are started in the bosses, and then the shell needs to be pushed down over each of those retainers, and you should hear them snap into place. Now the cowl can be installed. It needs to be slid in from the back, and then the front portion spread open so that it drops over the tube. You can see a slit there where the part is allowed to flex open to get over the tube. That slit provides clearance for the camming device that's on the arm. We'll see that when the arm is installed in a minute. Okay, now the cowl's in place so the arms can be installed. The arm can be installed now. First, the lower end of the arm is slid over the tube, and the little lobe that cams into the pocket on the upright is slid in through the slit in the cowl, lined up with the ears on the upright, and then rotated up into position. Now when that's in position, the screw holes in the top of the arm will line up with the T-nuts that are in the shell, and a pair of screws can be run in, and that attaches the top portion of the arm. Before that's done, you may want to check the lower end of the arm and make sure that's all tight, and make sure that the lobe is engaged with the upright. Okay. The other side, the arm on the other side is installed the same way. In the event that the snap features are damaged on the inner seat, inner back, okay, a pair of Phillips head screws can be installed, and they go through the holes in the upright into a couple of bosses that we've provided in the inner back. The part number for these screws is 6222 1122, and ordering that part number will get you approximately 30 screws. These screws are also used on armless chairs. Okay, Dewey's pointing at two locator pins that are molded in the outer seat. Those pins go through the holes in the outer back and help keep the parts located correctly. The outer back's installed by placing it in position and then lining up those pins with the holes in the outer back. And that needs to be done on each side. And once it's positioned there, you need to verify that the snap retainers are positioned over the bosses, and then each of those can be snapped into place. And now the chair is ready to go. Something we want to show here is the tilt lock can be serviced, or tilt lock can be added to a chair without tearing the chair all the way down. If the chair is flipped upside down, access to the tilt lock can be had by sliding the cowl up rearward inside of the outer back. To do that, first stretch the front and disengage the front portion of the cowl from the arms. And then the cowl can be slid way back, and it actually goes right up inside of the outer back. And then there you can see the tilt lock mechanism. The tilt lock can be installed or serviced in this manner, and that saves tearing the chair all the way down. Once the service is completed, the cowl just needs to be slid back out and the front portion spread out and dropped over the arm tubes. Now we're going to service the pneumatic cylinder. In order to remove the pneumatic cylinder, first the base has to be pulled off. That's a matter of removing the retainer clip on the bottom of the base, and then sliding off the flat washer, and then sliding the base straight off. The bearing assembly and the rubber donut are hanging on the end of the pneumatic cylinder. If you're working on clean carpeting, you want to make sure those don't drop on the carpet because they're going to have grease on them. Now the retainer clip that holds the cylinder in can be removed by reaching up inside of the end of the spindle tube with either a screwdriver or some needle nose pliers and grabbing a hold of one of the tangs on that retainer clip and twisting it and prying it out. The clip may be damaged when that happens if you don't get a new clip with a cylinder, and you should get a new clip with it, but if you don't have a new clip to put back in, usually the old one can be fixed by just hammering it flat. Okay, there's the clip. You can see by prying it out it's been bent up a little bit, but if that's hammered flat, the clip is reusable. Now at this point the pneumatic cylinder can be pulled straight out the end of the spindle tube. You can see a little plastic part there that centers the pneumatic cylinder in the spindle tube. And when that is pulled out, the actuator pin that's in the end of the pneumatic cylinder should come with it. If it doesn't, and the pin is still up inside there, you'll need to pull the chair up and set it upright and let that roll out the bottom of the spindle tube before the new cylinder is put in. Installing a new pneumatic cylinder is the reverse of the removal process. You may want to put a dab of grease on the actuator pin before it's installed in the end of the pneumatic cylinder. That way when the cylinder is tipped upside down, the pin won't fall out of it. The greased actuator pin is slid in the end of the cylinder. And now the cylinder is installed through the end of the spindle tube. You're going to have to wiggle the cylinder around slightly to line the end of the cylinder up with the hole in the spindle plug that's in the top of the control. Once the cylinder's in, the spacer can be slid on. And when the parts are assembled correctly, that cylinder spacer is going to slide up about 1/4 of an inch inside of the end of the spindle tube. Now the retainer clip can be installed. The retainer clip slides over the piston of the pneumatic cylinder and then is pushed up inside of the spindle tube. You can use a screwdriver to do this, or if you've got a large socket, half-inch drive socket, that works well also because that will push on the clip all the way around it. Want to try that, Dewey? Okay, a half-inch drive socket will slide over this, and you can use that to drive the retainer clip into place. Okay, tap the clip into place with a hammer. It needs to be snug, but you don't have to drive on it real hard. Now the rubber donut and the bearing assembly can be installed. They both just slide on the end of the cylinder. And the base can be put back on. If this is a chair that's been in use for a while, you may want to put new grease on the inside of the hub liner. The base is slid on, and then the washer is installed, and the retainer clip is slid into place.
Welcome to Haworth Seating Service Videos. These videos are designed to assist you in repairing Haworth and Conforto chairs. In this segment we will be discussing the Haworth Accolade chair. To begin, we will demonstrate how to remove and replace an Acolade chair back. First, the outer back needs to be removed. Begin by locating the 6 attachment pegs which hold the outer back onto the chair. Then, remove the outer back starting at the top, being careful not to damage the attachment pegs. Check the back to make sure that the pegs are not damaged. If they are broken, a new back will need to be ordered. To take off the inner back, loosen the Gibbs screws on the back. When removing these screws, notice that the top and bottom screws are different. Be sure to reinstall them into the same holes they were removed from. Then, tilt the back forward and lift it off of the chair. The next step is to remove the back height adjustment lever. This is done by removing the retaining screw holding it in the back and pulling the handle through the bezel. To reattach the back height adjustment lever, put the lever through the bezel and tighten the retaining screw. Check to make sure that the lever does not rub against the bezel. When reattaching the inner back to the chair, be sure to put the gibs over the back upright flange and slide the cushion down until the back height adjustment lever is below the upright tab. When tightening the back attachment screws, be sure to slide the gibs up. Begin tightening the top screw, then tighten the bottom screws. Check for back wobble and ease of adjustment. When reattaching the outer back, begin by lining up the bottom two attachment tabs and snapping them in. Then line up and attach the middle set of tabs, and finally the top set of tabs. To remove the base on an Acolade mechanical chair, begin by removing the screw and washer from the bottom of the base. When reassembling the base, seat the plastic piece into the square cutout at the base. Then reattach the washer and screw. To replace a pneumatic cylinder on an Acolade chair, turn the chair upside down. Remove the clip and washer at the bottom of the base. Now put a screwdriver in the hole to help hold up the bearing set while pulling the base off. Then remove the star washer that holds the cylinder in place. Be careful not to pry against the spindle tube. This may cause a burr. Remove the cylinder from the spindle. When the cylinder is removed, the activation pin may come out with it. If it does not, turn the chair over to remove the activation pin. When reinstalling the new cylinder, begin by putting a dab of grease on the pin and putting it in the end of the cylinder. Insert the cylinder in the spindle tube. Move the cylinder until you feel the pin seat into position. Then, drop the alignment collar into the spindle tube. Using masking tape, make an alignment collar on the spindle tube. This will help you install the star washer properly. Next, center the star washer on the spindle tube. With a 1-inch tube, drive the star washer into the spindle tube. Hammer until you feel the star washer seat. Now remove the tape. At this point, test the cylinder to make sure that it functions properly. This is done by activating the height adjustment mechanism lever. When putting the base on, check that the bearing set is installed properly. Make sure the rubber grommet is placed on first, followed by a thick washer, a thrust bearing cage, and then another thick washer. Now place the base on and reapply the thin washer and clip. To service an Acolade control or remove the inner seat, begin by removing the chair outer back. The outer back has 6 attachment pegs. Start at the top 2 and pry loose carefully. Be careful not to damage the attachment pegs. Next, pry loose the Christmas tree clips that hold on the lower cowl cover. If done carefully, they can be reused. Now, turn the chair upside down and remove the base by taking the clip and washer off. Be careful not to disturb the bearing set. Now you're ready to remove the arms. 3 screws are located in each arm. These screws require a number 40, a T40 Torx driver. The outermost screw is the longest and must be replaced in the same position. Next, remove the tension knob. Hold the knob while removing the Phillips screw. Now remove the knob. To take off the spring clip, pry off the clip with a screwdriver and pliers. A new clip will be supplied when servicing this portion of the chair. Remove the outer seat by taking out the 4 screws holding it into the seat pan. Slide the cover up and forward to remove it. Note the slots for the attachment rods on either side. Next, remove the cowl cover. It should be easy to lift off. Remove the 2 screws that hold the seat to the control. These screws require a T40 Torx driver. The seat can now be removed. To work on the inside of the control, the chair must be turned over. A post can be used to mount the chair while it is being serviced. Begin disassembly of the control by removing the retaining screw from the end of the tension lever. Now, using the tension knob, back the tension rod out of the cylindrical nut. Make sure that the back is propped up properly so that it will not slip out of position. Now, simply lift the tension plate out. The pneumatic rocker plate is next and should be removed with a 3/8" wrencher socket. This plate may need to be replaced if the chair has experienced cylinder activation difficulties. Remove the pneumatic lever by taking off the 2 Phillips screws located on the front right side of the control. Now pull the lever out of the control. Begin reassembly of the control by reinserting the pneumatic activation lever. Be sure the cup side is facing down. Then reattach the Phillips screws. Don't over-tighten them. Check the lever for free rotation. Next, replace the rocker arm. Be sure to have the arm setting on the pneumatic pin. Center it over the tension rod and replace the 3/8 inch nut. Check to be sure the arm has a slight side-to-side rock once the nut is in place. Now, replace the tension plate by inserting the flange into the slot on the front of the control and carefully set it on top of the springs. Attach the tension knob and cylindrical nut. Attach the retaining screw. Recheck the rocker arm for looseness. Here can now be reassembled. When adding a tilt lock to an Acolade chair, order the tilt lock hardware kit found in the service parts catalog. Begin by assembling the steel plate, flat spring, and crank handle together. The plate goes on top, and the flat spring goes into the slot on the crank. The handle is held on the left-hand side of the chair with 2 Phillips head screws. Attach these 2 screws. After installation, test the lever. Then, reattach the control to the seat and start the 2 front screws. Be sure that the control sits flat on the seat. You may have to pick up on the back and push down on the plate to properly align these parts. To assemble the remaining portion of the tilt lock, take the driver wire and hook it into the hole on the lever. Bring the wire up next to the control body. It should run between the control body and the upright. Then place the tilt lock plate inside the seat plate slider brackets. Now start the 4 screws that hold the tilt lock plate into position. With the screws loose, flex the control back until it is in a locked position. This will help to correctly position the plate while you tighten the 4 screws. Lower the cowl cover into position and drive the Christmas tree clips into place. Now attach the outer seat cover. Begin by removing the buttons where the adjustment levers extend out of the cover. Slide the cover onto the outside of the chair seat. Attach the washer for the tilt tension knob. Attach the tilt tension knob by holding it while tightening the Phillips head screw. Now tighten the 4 screws that hold on the seat outer shell. Next, attach the arms. A washer is used between the outside hole and the arm to help align the arm into place. Don't forget to use one. The long screw goes into the T-nut outside hole. Tighten the screws while guiding the arm so the gap between the arm and the back is no larger than 1/4 inch. Next, attach the base. Put grease on the spindle tube and be sure the bearing set is in place. Now place the base on the bottom of the chair. Now turn the chair upright in order to attach the outer back. Begin by aligning the bottom pegs, and then squeeze them into place. Next, look at the middle pegs to be sure they are in place, and then squeeze them into position. Finally, look at the top posts to be sure that they are also in place. Then squeeze them into position. Test the tilt lock to be sure that it operates properly. To replace the pneumatic activation pin on a forward tilt Acolade chair, begin with the seat cushion removed from the control. Then remove the retaining screw on the tension rod. Back out the tension rod, remove the tension plate and let the upright fall back. Next, remove the torsion springs. Notice that the bottom of the spring seats sit into holes in the bottom of the control body. Remove the rivets that hold the upright into the control body. Remove the upright by lifting it off of the control body. Now, remove the rocker plate by taking off the 3/8 inch nut. Then take out the nut, bolt, and rocker plate and set them aside. Next, remove the pneumatic activation pin. Replace it with a new activation pin. When reassembling, begin by reattaching the rocker plate. Tighten it so there is a slight side-to-side motion. Now, reattach the upright and slide the rivets into place. Next, insert the springs. Make sure that the bosses line up with the holes in the control body. Replace the tension plate by inserting the flange into the slot on the front of the control body and set it on top of the springs. Attach the tension rod and cylindrical nut. Lift forward on the seat back to start the cylindrical nut. Attach the screw and recheck the rocker arm for looseness. The rest of the chair can now be reassembled.
Welcome to Haworth Seating Service videos. These videos are designed to assist you in repairing Haworth and Comforto chairs. In this segment, we will be discussing Haworth Catalyst chairs. To begin, we will demonstrate how to remove and replace a Catalyst back. The chair shown is a Catalyst Professional chair. All Catalyst chairs use the same type of outer back attachment method. To remove the chair outer back, pry the outer cover off at the attachment points. Be careful not to break the attachments. After the outer back is removed, the Christmas tree attachments must be removed from the outer back and the inner back. To remove them from the outer back, twist and pull the trees out. To pull the Christmas trees out of the inner shell, use pliers to grab hold and pull the trees out. New Christmas trees will need to be inserted into the outer back prior to reattachment. To remove the back, simply take out the screws that attach the back to the arms, or upright in case of a task chair. When reinstalling the chair back, line up the notch by the chair arms and tighten the screws. To change a Catalyst low-back task chair to a Catalyst high-back task chair, or to replace the arms on a Catalyst task chair, begin by placing the chair upside down and removing the control assembly. Once the control is removed, slide the cover off of the rear of the chair. To change the low back to a high back, begin by removing the 6 upright screws. Once the screws are removed, take the current upright off. The kit for converting the low back to a high back comes fully assembled for easy attachment. Simply put the high back on the chair bottom and start all 6 screws by hand. Drive the screws carefully. Be careful not to cross thread or to apply too much pressure to the T-nuts. Go back over the screws and tighten to approximately 40 inch-pounds. To replace the arms, simply remove the 3 screws that hold the arm into place. Now pull the arm and the arm attachment plate off. Chairs with arms have a steel plate in the cushion to assure stable attachment. To add arms to any Catalyst armless chair, a new cushion must be specified. When attaching arm and plate to the cushion, start the 3 nuts by hand. Tighten each nut to 40 inch-pounds. Now place the outer seat cover back on the chair . Place the control assembly on the chair and tighten the 6 attachment screws. When removing the base on a Catalyst mechanical chair manufactured from 1987 to mid-1989, begin by turning the chair over and unscrewing the cap. Next, remove the wire compression ring. Then adjust the chair base counterclockwise until the nut on the shaft is accessible. With a 3/8 inch socket, remove the nut on the shaft bottom. Now remove the clutch assembly. Lift up on the base while using a special magnetized tool to remove the split nut. Next, take out the conical device that splits the nuts. Then, remove the urethane washer and the hat-shaped washer. Finally, remove the anti-friction washer. Now, remove the base. Begin reassembly by putting the anti-friction washer and spring over the spindle. Now put the base on. Followed by the hat-shaped washer, the urethane washer, and then the conical washer. Reinsert the split nut into the base. Pick up on the base and thread the nut until it is past the retaining point in the threads for the compression ring. Hold the base down and be sure the split nut is spaced properly to accept the clutch. Seat the clutch into place. Compress the base to overcome the spring tension and start the 3/8 inch nut. Do not over-tighten the nut. Reinsert the compression ring into the groove. Adjust the chair downward to be sure the ring is seated. Make sure it stops and the clutch is out. Now, apply the cap to the bottom of the base. To remove the base on a Catalyst mechanical height chair manufactured between 1989 and 1993, begin by removing the screw and washer from the bottom of the base. Now, remove the base. To reassemble the base, seat the plastic piece into the cutout. And attach the washer and screw. To remove the base on a Catalyst pneumatic height adjustment chair manufactured from 1989 to present, remove the clip and washer on the bottom of the base. Now put a screwdriver into the hole to help hold the bearing set in place while pulling the base off. To replace a pneumatic cylinder on a Catalyst chair, begin by removing the base and the bearing set. Then, remove the star washer that holds the cylinder in place. Be careful not to pry on the spindle, as it could bend. Remove the cylinder from the spindle. When removing the pneumatic cylinder, the activation pin may come out with it. If it does not, turn the chair over to remove the pin. When installing the new cylinder, begin by putting grease on the activation pin and insert it into the end of the new cylinder. Next, insert the cylinder into the spindle tube. Move the cylinder until you feel the pin seat into position. Next, slide the locating ring over the cylinder and seat it inside the spindle. Now, using masking tape, put an alignment collar on the spindle tube. This will help when installing the star washer. Next, center the star washer on the spindle. With a 1-inch tube, drive the star into the spindle tube. Hammer until you feel the star washer seat. At this point, test the cylinder to make sure that it functions properly. Now remove the tape. Now reassemble the bearing set . Put the base on . Reapply the washer and clip . And the chair is ready for action. To retrofit a mechanical height catalyst to a pneumatic height adjustment chair, these parts will be needed. In addition, a control cover is also necessary. Begin by turning the chair upside down. Then remove the control and base assembly from the cushion. The base does not have to be removed to take the control off. After the screws are removed, take the control off of the chair. Now remove the screws that hold the cover on. These are held with Torx number 10 screws. The cover will not be reused. Next, remove the screws on the plate that holds the cover on. These are Torx number 20 screws. With a screwdriver, remove the clip and washer on top of the mechanical height adjustment rod. Add the pneumatic actuating lever. One end of the lever spring hooks under the activation rod while the other rests between the rod and the inside of the control body. Slide and press the lever into place. Install the upper tab and screw over the lever to hold it in place. Replace the cover mounting plate and lever reinforcement tab using the same Torx number 20 screws that held the plate assembly in place. The alignment tabs on the cover will help lock it into place. Hook these tabs into the front of the control housing and attach the nameplate. Reassemble the control and base to the bottom of the chair cushion. Tighten the 6 Torx number 40 screws. The next step in the conversion process is to add the pneumatic cylinder. Begin by removing the base. Pull the mechanical height adjustment mechanism out. Shake out the hexagon nut that is in the spindle tube. Put tape on bottom of the spindle tube. This will help guide the star washer. Next, put a small amount of grease on the activation pin and insert it into the cylinder. Move the cylinder until you feel the pin seat into position. Put the locating collar on. This holds the cylinder into place. Center the star washer on the spindle tube and drive it in with a 1-inch tube until it seats. Activate the cylinder to be sure that it functions properly. Remove the tape from the bottom of the spindle tube. Replace the bearing kit. First the rubber grommet, then the thick washer, bearing cage, and thick washer. Attach the base. Place the washer and retaining clip on the base. The chair is now ready for action.
Welcome to Haworth Seating Service Videos. These videos are designed to assist you in repairing Haworth and Conforto chairs. In this segment we will be discussing Haworth system seating chairs. To begin, we will demonstrate how to remove and replace the system seating chair back. First, we must locate the posts and spring clips. Then, with a large flathead screwdriver, pry the back off by applying pressure to the 4 attachment points. In preparing the inner back for reattachment, the existing spring clips will need to be removed and disposed of or pressed onto the posts. New clips will need to be inserted into the chair back. To replace the inner back, simply position the back onto the upright and attach with the upright attachment bolts. Note the Loctite that is applied to these bolts to help prevent loosening. Be sure to check that the back functions properly before attaching the outer back shell. If the back is loose, an adjustment may be made by tapping the upright bracket with a rubber mallet. When putting the back outer shell on, be sure to apply pressure at the location of each of the spring clips until the back feels seated. Next, we will demonstrate how to remove and replace system seating bases. We will begin with operational and secretarial chairs with mechanical height adjustment, manufactured from 1980 to 1984. This is the same as management and executive chairs, as well as chairs with high polish bases with mechanical height adjustment, manufactured from 1980 to 1989. To take off the base, pull back the rubber boot and loosen the 4 screws on the base. After the screws have been removed, pull the base off. System seating operational and secretarial chairs with mechanical height adjustment, manufactured from 1984 to 1989, have a steel base with a plastic cap. To take off this base, first pull back the rubber boot. Then, with a flat screwdriver, compress the tab in the column. At this point, twist the base 1/4 of a turn and pull off the base. When reinstalling the base, place the base on the spindle, compress the spring, and twist 1/4 turn to lock the white hub to the base. Mechanical height adjustable chairs manufactured from 1989 through 1993 can have the base removed by simply removing the bottom screw, sliding the column cover off the base, and pulling the base off. When reinstalling this base, seat the square end of the shaft into the square hole in the base. All system seating chairs with pneumatic cylinders manufactured between 1980 and 1993 have the same base connection. To remove this base, begin by detaching the convoluted rubber boot or plastic column cover. Then pry the bottom clip slightly open and slide it off the cylinder. Carefully lift off the base, being careful not to disturb the bearing set. When reinstalling the base, be sure to put the bearing set on in the proper order. First, apply the rubber bushing, followed by a thick washer, the thrust bearing cage, and another thick washer. Then, install the base onto the spindle and reapply the thin washer and the clip. To replace the pneumatic cylinder on a system seating chair, turn the chair upside down. Begin by removing the base and the bearing set. Then, remove the star washer that holds the cylinder into the spindle tube. Be careful not to pry against the spindle tube or you could create a burr. Remove the cylinder from the spindle. Turn the chair over to remove the 2 activation pins. The small pin may come out with a cylinder. When installing the new cylinder, begin by putting a dab of grease on the small pin and putting it into the end of the cylinder. Then drop the larger pin with a rubber washer into the spindle tube. Use a screwdriver to assist the pin into the hole at the top of the spindle tube. Next, insert the new cylinder into the spindle tube. Move the cylinder until you feel the pin seat into position. Drop the plastic alignment collar into position. Now, put masking tape around the bottom of the spindle. This will align the star washer during installation. Next, center the star washer on the spindle. With a 1-inch tube, drive the star into the spindle tube. Hammer until you feel the star washer seated against the cylinder. At this point, remove the tape and test the cylinder to make sure that it functions properly. This is done by activating the height adjustment handle. Next, reassemble the bearing set. Add grease to the bottom of the spindle tube and put the base on. Reapply the washer and clip and reattach the column cover. The chair is now ready for action. To remove the arms on system seating chairs manufactured after September of 1990, begin with the chair upside down. Remove the outer shell by taking the 4 Phillips screws out. Slide the outer shell rearward and up, exposing the arm attachment screws. Prior to September of 1990, system seating arms were die-cast aluminum mounted on a stretcher. To replace these arms, the entire assembly must be removed and replaced with a new seat pan and arms. Refer to the service parts catalog for part number information. After September of 1990, the arms are mounted to the seat shell. The shell on the left is for chairs with arms and has a plate which the arms screw into. The shell on the right is for an armless chair and does not have an arm attachment plate. An arm attachment plate must be on the seat pan to attach arms to it. To take off the arms, remove the attachment screws and pull the arm off. When reinstalling a new arm, start all 3 screws and check alignment to the back upright to be sure they are balanced. Control the gap so it looks uniform on either side of the upright. Tighten the 3 screws on each arm. Now attach the outer shell. Start by lining up the rear portion of the outer shell and sliding it forward, then tap it into place. Install the 4 attachment screws. To replace the posture tilt mechanism and chair upright, begin with the chair upside down. Start by removing the bottom outer seat and outer back. Remove the bottom portion of the pitch adjustment handle. Then remove the retaining screw with a Phillips screwdriver. Remove the posture tilt cowl cover by removing the 2 Phillips screws. Then lift and pull the cowl cover off. This is done to accommodate the bosses that fit into the upright. The posture tilt is located between the 2 silver brackets. The back upright is attached with 2 bolts. Remove the upright attachment bolts. Behind the upright attachment bolts are 2 Phillips screws that hold a trim piece that will have to be removed. Remove both screws and loosen the trim piece. To take the back cushion off of the upright, remove the 4 attachment screws and pull the back from the upright. To remove the banana brackets, take off the last 1/2-inch drive bolt from just behind the control. The posture tilt mechanism is the double inverted T at the back of the control. To take the posture tilt mechanism off, remove the small bright bullet from the posture tilt mechanism. The trim bracket can also be removed. All of these pieces are included in the posture tilt replacement kit. When reassembling the posture tilt mechanism and upright, begin by reinserting the posture tilt mechanism bullet and the trim bracket. Install the upper banana brackets and trim bracket with the bolt. Before tightening the bolt, be sure the T-bracket of the posture tilt mechanism is properly located in the banana bracket. Tighten the bolt behind the control and adjust the trim bracket. Next, install the back upright beginning with the upper bolt first. Now reattach the trim piece to the back upright before installing the lower bolt. Insert the bosses through the upright and attach the screws. Install lower bolt and align the inside bracket. Tighten the bolts after snugging all three. To reinstall the inner back, start all 4 bolts. Then drive them into place. When reinstalling the upright cover, place the bosses into the upright and slide them forward. Reinstall the cover screw. Next, put the back pitch adjustment handle back on. Tighten the screw and snap the handle top back into place. When reattaching the seat outer shell, start at the rear of the chair and slide the outer shell forward into place. Align the screws with the inner bosses and tighten. Take any looseness out of the back by tapping the upright horseshoe bracket with a rubber mallet. Then, align the bosses on the chair back with the spring clips and squeeze them back on.